Hello everyone, welcome to the Nordic Football Podcast, Eliteserien. 10 players to watch for 2022. It's been a very popular section of the podcast over the last 5 years now, Jonathan, and this year it's going to be on Patreon. Thank you to anyone who has subscribed to us, either a recent subscriber or for those who have been regular long term. Really appreciate you, and this is now some exclusive content for you as a reward. So yeah, we're starting off with 10 to watch in the Eliteserien. As you can see on screen there, the first player is SIMEN NORDLI from HARALD. But Jonathan, I know you love these 10 to watch, and you'll be watching and listening with bated breath.
Yes, hi everyone. Steve has persuaded me this year to finally get the camera out and put my ugly mug on TV. So I'm happy to be on this and to bring it to you patrons first. 10 to watch is a very exciting and popular section of the podcast, especially the season previews. Over the years, we've had a lot of scouts contacting us from football clubs, professional clubs, teams abroad. Lots of people interested in our 10 to watch and knowing, what it's all about. And this year we've decided, as we said, to put it on Patreon, and hopefully you get a lot of value from it. We track the players. I mean, there's no set criteria. You tend to go for more established players from time to time. I tend to go for maybe younger players who are breaking out, but there's no definitions, there's no rules. That's part of the fun of this podcast. We can both have our own perspectives on it. And so, yeah, if you're ready, Steve, let's get into it. Absolutely. Your first player, as you mentioned, is SIMEN NORDLI. Take it away.
Yeah, and I have chosen 10 players from 10 different teams. Now, that isn't a rule. You can have 5 on the same team if you wanted. But I like to sort of spread it out a bit, and if I can, I try and spread out the positions as well. So yeah, I'm starting with SIMEN NORDLI at HARALD, and he was in the Eliteserien 2 years ago, and he did well. He scored that memorable goal against Molde. Do you remember on Eurosport, the first match that was back after COVID? But he had an exceptional year in OBOS last year, 20 assists and 10 goals. Now that does not mean you're going to be brilliant at Eliteserien level, but for someone who kind of impressed last time he was here, I feel like he's kind of moved maybe to the next level. I was surprised that no one bought him last year. I would have definitely snapped him up after they got relegated, and I'm a little bit surprised that no one's kind of coming for him now again. But he is 22 years old. He's entering probably his prime. If things go, he's not going to put up the same numbers as he did in OBOS. No way. That can't happen again, not in Eliteserien, but I feel like he's got enough technical ability to really catch the eye in what might be quite a decent Arsenal side this season. So I feel like he can definitely have a good year, Jonathan.
Yes, and sort of just looking at some of the goals, I mean, he's a decent free kick taker as well, isn't he, Steve? He's adept in many different areas. Scores goals with his right foot, scores goals with the left foot. I mean, what were his numbers like in the OBOS last season, and what are his key areas? Is he a bit of a dribbler? Is he a bit of a passing maestro? What are his key areas?
He has got great vision, and he's got a technical ability. 20 assists in 30 games. That's Branko van den Boomen level in League 2 with Toulouse this year. You don't get players like that very often. It usually means they're far too good for that level. And there can be a big gulf between OBOS and Eliteserien. We mentioned Nicolas Castro in the main podcast. He could bust again, NORDLI. This could be a terrible pick for me on the 10 to watch. But I've got a fairly strong opinion of him, that he's got the technical ability to create chances at this level. And I think come the end of the season, or even mid-season, we might be talking about, a big club in Norway might come in for him, or even somewhere like Belgium.
Yeah, and those are always the destinations, aren't they, for Norwegian and Swedish clubs generally. There's always scouts watching from those leagues, and maybe there's some listening to this Patreon. So SIMEN NORDLI, 22-year-old from Arlesen. Keep an eye on him this season, attacking midfield player. In terms of his statistics, he's done very well at OBOS level, as you've mentioned there. He's got 29 goals, 30 assists in 85 appearances, which is incredible, really. But only 28 appearances in the Eliteserien, 4 goals, 6 assists. So let's see how he adapts again back in Eliteserien this season. Definitely, as you said, they're one to watch, Steve.
Absolutely. I think it can go well. And I'm going to move on to my second player now, and that is ELIAS CHRISTOFFERSEN HAGEN basically the Patrick Berg replacement. Everyone talked about Patrick Berg the last 2 or 3 years at Glimt. I'm pretty sure he would have been in one of my 10 to watch at some point. I hope he was anyway. It better have been. But Hagen is kind of the ready-made replacement from within at Buda Glimt. You may have heard of him before. He has started games in the past, not a regular starter, and he's kind of impressed when he's done that. Did well in the Europa League matches over the winter and the start of this 2022. He still has a fair bit to learn. He's 22 years old, which for a defensive midfielder is young. I think that type of player can mature more with age at a certain time. It's not like, you feel like strikers and certain players, they need to be a bit younger. 22 might feel old for some. I feel like he's going to get a lot more minutes this season, Hagen. This is quite an obvious pick, by the way. It's not exactly rocket science that he's going to have a good year. I'm sure quite a lot of people will expect the same, but sometimes you've got to state the obvious on these lists, haven't you? And he's got all the technical and I think mental attributes required to succeed. I can see him doing really well, and you've got to give him a bit of time. You can't expect him to step into Berg's shoes from day one, but the early signs are very positive for Hagen. And I could have picked several players from Buda Glimt for this list. Hugo Vettelsen, but I had him before on this list years ago at Stabæk, and I thought about a couple of others as well, but ultimately I think Elias Kristoffersen Hagen is set for an eye-catching year in the middle of the park. You are muted.
Yeah, and at 22 years old, he fits the under 23 bracket again, doesn't he, Steve? So that's very interesting to see. And you mentioned he's a lot of people are saying he's a Patrick Berg replacement. Is he kind of that deep line player that you mentioned? And can he add any elements to his game this season? Is there any ways he can improve?
I don't think he's quite as good in terms of vision that Berg had, and he's not obviously as much of a finished article. So I think he can certainly add to his game, both mentally and technically, Jonathan, for sure. And that will come often with just playing regular minutes in big matches. But he's impressed before in big matches on its own. I think probably a bigger question is whether can he string together, say, 10 consecutive games. That's going to be a test for him because he's never done that before. He's sometimes had to come in for like the odd couple of games in a row or whatnot. Now it's over a whole season. So I'm expecting, as I say, there will be a few teething problems for Hagen, but he's got the potential ability to really just go from here to like here very quickly, and we might be at the end of the season be talking about another prime Glimt talent who might be on his way out of the club.
Yeah, and if you're just looking at his sort of statistical profile on Wyscout, our partners Wyscout, he total action successful in last season was 73.6% of his total actions were successful, and he seems to be quite accurate with passing, 87% pass accuracy, which is quite good to see, and 3.85 interceptions per game. One thing I note about him, Steve, he kind of looks a little bit like Thomas Soucek, doesn't he? The West Ham player. But yeah, let's see how he gets on, because Glimt, one thing we know about Buda Glimt, they produce talents every year. They have that conveyor belt, don't they? Players just raring to go. So should we move on to your third?
Yeah, absolutely. The third player on my list is a goalkeeper, Mads Christiansen from Lillestrøm, and I always have to have a goalkeeper on this list, at least one. I've got 2 on this list actually this year. I do like a goalkeeper. And for those who have been reading the Wyscout blogs that we produced, there was a small profile on Christiansen on one of the blogs at the back end of last year. This is just a 21-year-old keeper who, to be starting in any top league at that age is impressive. I know it's only Norway, Eliteserien, but that's still impressive. It just shows you how young and talented he is. He ranked first in most prevented goals last season in the league, which was, it wasn't necessarily a great goalkeeping crop at times in the Eliteserien last year, but this keeper is a no-nonsense, no-frills kind of guy. He's not the sort of keeper who's going to make saves for the cameras. He gets on with the basics with minimal fuss, minimum mistakes and errors. He's not going to... In Football Manager, terms, his eccentricity would be like 1 or 2. He's not going to come up with a spectacular that often, but he does the basics well, and I really like that about him. Mulder signed Karlström from Tromsø this winter. I would have actually gone for this lad myself. I think he offers more potential. I think he's better than him already, and I know kind of last year he kind of had a breakout season. I think this year he can go even to a higher level, and hopefully, I mean, there's a chance he might regress. Second season expectations higher, but I think he kicks on, and I think what he needs to add to his game is probably a few more of these reflex saves, like saving stuff that you're like, wow, how has he pulled that off? But I think that will come because he's clearly got a great eye for the ball, and still only 21. It's remarkable.
Yes, according to a recent guest on the pod as well, friend of the podcast, Chris Hilliam, Footy and Alec Chris, he says that Christiansen's goal prevention numbers last season, he ranked best for goals prevented per 90 in the league as well, which is quite impressive. So it looks like you're onto something there with this goalkeeper. I mean, what you've got a second goalkeeper to come, Steve, as well in this list. What for you separates the top keepers from the maybe second tier keepers? In
Eliteserien or just in general?
Just in general, and also in Eliteserien.
I like keepers that don't make many mistakes. I hate, like, I'm a betting man, as you know, and I generally like betting in leagues where there's keepers that have got errors in them, like randomly letting goals. I'll accept that they can come up with some spectacular saves sometimes, but I love betting on overs in matches where I know keepers are going to come up with some gaffes, and so in general, I like if I was a manager, I want a keeper that's not going to make crucial errors. Just do what you expect it to do, as in don't concede goals that you shouldn't concede. Except sometimes there's nothing you can do, but I would much rather have a solid Nigel Martin than a Fabian Barthez, if you know what I mean.
Most certainly. Well, Nigel Martin, that's a blast from the past. Barthez, there are a few Barthezes in the Eliteserien I've seen in the past as well, and some in Scandinavia, Sweden as well. But no, that's an interesting insight there. Let's move on to your next pick, fourth of your 10 to watch, and you've gone for someone at Rosenborg.
Yeah, there was a few from Rosenborg I looked at. I do like the lad Pereira, the left back, but again, I think I actually had him on my 10 to watch before at Viking. And I thought about Noah Jean Holm as a striker, but I'm still undecided about him. So I've gone with CARLO HOLSE. This is probably the most established player on the whole list. So it's some might call it a boring pick. He had a pretty good season last year, actually. Probably Rosenborg's second best player behind Vecchia, but I feel like he can kick on even more. Especially as I actually think Rosenborg are a bit of a sleeper of a side. I think people are a bit low on them. I predict them to finish as high as second. It might be optimistic, but I think they're going to be in the running for a medal. And I think if they're going to compete, then Holse's going to be one of them guys. He can play in any attacking position, midfield, wings, even up front. He's got great dynamism about him. He's got a turn of pace and skill. He can gain a couple of yards on a man very quickly, and I like that about him. He has that drive and energy, and he cuts inside nicely. And he's still fairly young. I think he had a very good 2021. He can have an even better 2022, in my opinion. And I just feel like, again, it might seem a bit of an obvious pick, but I feel like others are maybe talking about players like Noah Jean Holm or Via Bima at Rosenborg, and Holse might even go under the radar again, or Vecchia, and quite rightly so. But I think Holse's got a really good year ahead of him, and I think at the end of the year, if Rosenborg do have a good campaign, we might be saying, you know what, he's a candidate for one of the players of the whole season.
Yes, and I know, just looking into his Y-Scout data a little bit, he's got last season he averaged 0.26 goals per 90 and 0.26 assists per 90 for a total of 7 and 7, I believe, in the campaign in total in 2,429 minutes played. You've listed him as midfield / wings. I mean, does he have a favoured position out of those? One area I've noticed as well is that, I mean, I'm sure he's not a forward in that sense, is he? Because his aerial duels one and his duels one are a bit on the low side. But I'm assuming that's because he's more of maybe a wide man.
Do you know what? He'll get stuck in though. He won't shy away from tackles and stuff. He's not going to win that many because he's probably not a great tackler, but he won't shy away. I like him best on left wing as an inverted winger, or inside forward even you could call it. He cuts inside. But what's interesting to me is he actually played in kind of centre midfield at times last year, drifted around a lot, almost like a roaming playmaker or a roaming box to box sort of guy, and I'm interested to see how Kjetil Rekdal uses him. But Rekdal's system he will always leave a couple of players back defending, so it might give HOLSE more of a license to really impact the attacking side of the game. So I like him on that left wing, but he could pop up pretty much anywhere and make a difference in the game. He can score and he can assist. He can be greedy if needed as well, but he can also play really good as a teammate.
There you go, and he could be someone to fire Rosenborg to that second place prediction that you've got on the main season preview. If you haven't listened to it yet on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, go and get that season preview. But for now, let's move on. And I'm not very happy about this, Steve, coming up now. As we move on to our fifth player. This is maybe something unprecedented on this Nordic podcast. Never been done before. You've picked the same player from the 2021 season for 2022 10 to watch. Absolutely scandalous. I mean, I wasn't going to allow it at first. But, you've told me that categorically you want to include him again. And, end of the day, I'm going to listen carefully to your rationale, and then we'll see if we allow it or not. Who is your fifth player in this 10 to watch?
I make up my own rules sometimes, Jonathan, don't I?
Why?
David DATRO FOFANA. And I've got to be honest, I got him wrong last year. I got him wrong. We expected a lot more from him. Incredibly, he didn't score a single Eliteserien goal. He only played 304 minutes in the league. I mean, he scored in Europe for Molde at the start of 2021, and that was it. That was as good as it got. I don't know what went wrong with FOFANA. I know it didn't help that Ohi was just the indisputable holder, like the indisputable starter up front. But I certainly expected him to at least come off the bench and get minutes and score goals. There was rumours that he wasn't putting enough of a shift in training midway through the season, and he wasn't settling in very well, which is a concern. But there's no doubt about it, this guy has got a talent. From whenever I've actually seen him play, he looks good. He's got physicals, he's got mentals, certainly technical as well. Probably mental is the question mark, I guess, if certain things are not worked out. But now Ohi's gone, it falls on him. He's the only real natural striker that Molde have got in the squad. He's been scoring goals in pre-season in the cup, and he's ready to step up. And look, I had to include him because there's a chance he could have an amazing year. Like, I'm talking 20 plus goals, and if someone's having that good a year, he has to be a candidate to be included. If you go from no goals to say 20 plus goals, I feel like he's a complete exception. I kind of got him wrong, but I certainly believe I'll get him right now. And if he doesn't work out this year, I'll just put him in next year again. So
exactly, cheating away though.
But
getting it 3 or 4.
He was described as the Mbappe of Côte d'Ivoire.
I don't care what he's described as. Haven't even twice just because he didn't do. I mean, if we went by that rationale, I've had so many players who I've gone too early on them and they haven't performed that year, and I've just had to accept it. Otherwise, half my 10 to watch this year would be probably from the last 2 years. But anyway, one player I had last year, Oliver Dover, at Hammarby, goalkeeper. He didn't quite become a first team regular, but he showed some glimpses. But now he's really looking like he could be a big first team player this season. Hammarby, young goalkeeper. I know you like your keepers, and I would have loved to have included him again, but I'm not allowed. So
there's always exceptions.
Jury's out.
There's always.
FOFANA, to be fair, I did see him when he first joined the club at Molde, and he did look very excited in the early games. And I guess the burden on him is going to be for goals this year, really, isn't it?
I really feel like he has to stand out this year. I think only injury is going to stop him having a mega year. He's going to get the minutes as long as he knuckles down, gets his head down, and he's mentally in the right place. I think he's going to be really strong. I feel for me to include him in this selection 2 years in a row, he doesn't just have to be good this year, he has to be exceptional for me to justify this selection. And I believe there's a chance he could be exceptional. So that's why he's in. We're going to have a small break now, halfway through this. We're 5 down, 5 more to go. Join us after the break.
Welcome back. And after that short break, I mean, the jury is out on DATRO FOFANA, if he should be allowed in twice. Please leave your comments below in the comment section. Obviously, if you're watching this on the platforms, you're welcome to leave free comments, and you can also like it as well on Patreon. And tell us also on Nordic Football Twitter if you agree with that, if we should be allowed. But let's move on to the second half of your 10 to watch, Steve. And then your next one is another goalkeeper.
Yeah, I've gone with Leopold WAHLSTET at odd. You know I love a goalkeeper, so I found a way to sneak him in. It's an interest. What he did last season, he basically overtook Sondre Rosbach as the odd number 1. Now Rosbach at one point was heralded as this great talent. Didn't quite work out for Rosbach, but he's still a very strong keeper. He didn't have a particularly great first half of the season, but I never ever would have expected him to be dropped. But WAHLSTET, obviously, and I'd never really heard of WAHLSTET that much, to be honest. I certainly hadn't seen much of him. But he got into the team, and he actually made his first start of last season in the league was against Bodo Glimt, and they got a 1-1 draw away from home, and he had a really good game. I honestly thought kind of Rosbach was just being made an example of, and they might just reinstate him. But WAHLSTET kept the gloves for the end of the season. He only kept 1 clean sheet, but that was a very poor odd side. And it looks like in pre-season here he's going to stay number 1. And that's arguably even more impressive that in a whole off season with a new manager, he keeps the gloves. Now he's under strong competition, and that might be a good thing. He's motivated to keep the the number 1 spot. I like about this keeper is he, in a different way to Christiansen, this guy's got a bit of flair about him. He is more of a Barthez to the Nigel Martin, if you know what I mean. He can kind of do random things at times in a good way. I think maybe that could cost him as well, but he has got an X factor about him, and it's just a feeling about a keeper that he can really save you points on crucial moments in games. And I think now that this odd team's better, we can really highlight that, and he can come up big in crucial moments.
Yeah, and one interesting thing about him is he's Swedish.
Yes, he is Swedish. I think he played for Sweden under 21s.
He's a Dalkurd as well.
So yeah, he's, as I say, he almost came up from nowhere. It's one of them situations. I just never even looked at the crop of keepers Odd had, because like Rosbach was the number 1 and like undisputed, and then this guy suddenly came on the scene, and I'm like, you know what? He's not bad. He's not bad, and he played well in a poor team, and he's 22, so it's a nice age to develop into the team. He's being kept on his toes. I think because the competition's strong, he knows he can't afford a downturn in form at all, and that might help him. At the same time, he might lose his spot and then regain it again. But I honestly see WAHLSTET either becoming their long-term number 1, or he impresses so much that someone buys him and he moves on to somewhere bigger.
Yeah, I like him. There's some clips from a game against Christiansen back in November, and he made some brilliant saves in that game. Comes off his line very quickly, doesn't he, as well?
He's really quick, and he's just got something about him that you're like, wow, you know. And I said before, I prefer a keeper that's more basic and just does the basics really well, but I'm not going to turn down someone this talented either. You know, I think the 2 goalkeepers on my list are completely different, and I like that about them. So 2 young keepers to definitely watch in Eliteserien this year. I think they're going to do really well.
Well, speaking of young players, your next player on the list is 18 years old, and he is a player who is at Godset. From Godset, tell us about him, Steve.
The youngest player on the list, TOBIAS GULLIKSEN. Yeah, 18 years old. You wouldn't think it. I mean, last season he scored 5 goals, 2 assists, and it's just a 17-year-old, which is remarkable. And he's either-footed, a great technical talent, And I think now I'm interested to see if he's bulked up a little bit more, and it still might take him a year or two to get prime physique and stuff. But wizard with his feet, great technical player, can play. I've listed him as an attacking midfielder, but he can play on the wings as well. Very sort of CARLO HOLSE is similar in that way. But small guy, light on his feet, and it's been great to see him, a young talent, develop at Godset. And I think again it's just about improving on last season, really. I mean, you could say last season was his breakout season in terms of us getting in the team and that. I think this year, either this year or next year, he can move up to an even higher level. And you know, his ceiling is quite high. It doesn't mean he's going to get there, but if he can stay injury free and keep developing, I'm really excited for him.
Scored some good goals as well, hasn't he? A couple into the top corner in recent games in pre-season and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a place that's produced talent before. You think of Martin Odegaard. If you think of, you know, there's been a couple of others down the years as well. It's it's not necessarily a hotbed for talent, Godset, but when they have produced good young footballers, and is in a good environment as well now to develop. I don't expect he'll leave anywhere. He's probably a bit too young for that. But if he can develop sort of in terms of physically and just work on, you know, the mental and technical side of his game, then yeah, he's the sort of guy you could see going to somewhere like Holland, the sort of Evian-esque, or even Germany in a couple of years' time.
Lovely stuff. And yeah, interestingly enough, he's probably best known so far in his career for the 2 goals against Molde that helped them in that 6-0 win against them last season. That's incredible result.
Yeah.
So he's certainly got some talent to look out for there. Interesting one to keep an eye on, and definitely one to watch. These players that we normally talk about, they do tend to end up in the places like Netherlands, Belgium. Always scouts watching them, and you know, based on our tips, sometimes they even take our ones to watch and go off and watch these players. So let's see where Gulliksen ends up and what happens from here. Next on your list is someone at Tromsø. Another centre midfielder. You got a lot of midfielders in this.
Yeah, I've not actually got a centre back in this whole list this year. It just shows you that the defenders. I think this is a bit in short supply at the moment for young talent. Anyway, SAKARIAS OPSAHL. This guy might be the weakest player on my list. I'm not going to lie. I hope he proves me wrong. But I nearly went with August Mikkelsen here, but I think Mikkelsen's a bit of an obvious one. But I like OPSAHL. He's from Vålerenga, and OPSAHL, his brother I think has joined the club now as well, the left back. I like SAKARIAS OPSAHL. I think he just needed a team to give him more minutes, and he wasn't getting it at Vålerenga, so Tromsø signed him midway through last season permanently, and you know, he became a regular starter for them. They're not the strongest in midfield, so I think he should nail his spot down. He's good technically. He takes a few of the set pieces and stuff like that, and he's got the potential to develop into what I'd call a good deep line playmaker. I'm not absolutely convinced and uncertain that he will become an amazing talent, but there's a chance of it. Just a gut feeling, this one. This is a bit of I'm not calling it a left field selection, but you know, this one might not be such a strong player as some of the others. It's not guaranteed. He's got to work hard at it, but there's just something about him. When I've seen him, he passes the ball nice. I like his vision. Does the basics well, and I think all he's needed is just a place to settle down and nail down a regular starting spot, and it will do him the world of good. If he can stay injury free, he'll probably end up starting 26, 27 games out of 30, and that will do his progression really, really strong. And
good stuff.
Good player to watch out for. Maybe the ceiling is not as high as some others, but something there.
Yeah. And your next one on your list, we've got 2 more left. You've got our player of Viking.
HARALD TANGEN, 21-year-old midfielder. Kind of stepped down on the scene last year. Looked good. And again, I think it's just a question of, again, get more minutes in the team. Joe Bell's left. He's one of the candidates to replace kind of the Joe Bell role. So you're going to get sort of a mixture of midfield roles. He's going to be a versatile player, passing, movement, chipped in with a few goals last season. I love his mental strength from this player. I think it's his biggest biggest weapon in terms of not just determination but also off the ball, things like that. He looks like an intelligent player, and he kind of bulked out a bit last season, rode onto the scene. I think he kick on again at a Viking side in a good team as well, and that helps. Surrounded by some good role models, some good players, and this is someone I think at the end of the season we might be talking about leaving the league if he really steps up to the plate like I think he can.
What's his main position or best position? Because you've got him listed here as midfield. What's his best position?
Centre mid, box to box, I would say, but he's versatile enough that I think he can play pretty much anywhere if he had to. But it's just a question of what role you want him to do. Again, he's got a lot of strings to his bow. He's not a one-trick pony or anything like that. Maybe that's something he needs to nail down, like a clear identity to what he is. But I don't think it's a bad thing to be versatile in this day and age, is it? A lot of clubs need that, and we'll look out for that.
Definitely, and he also plays for Norway under-20s. He's recently played a game for Norway's under-20s just this past week gone. So looks like a bit of a player there. I mean, yeah, it wasn't really. He's not prolific. Was he 5 goals last season? Was it? Which isn't bad actually, to be fair, from box-to-box midfield positions. 2 assists, total 26 shots on target in the campaign from 2,000 plus minutes played. 600 passes accuracy of 83.7% according to Wyscout, and generally kind of can mix it up between dribbling and long passing and crossing, things like that. So a bit of an all-round player really, isn't he? So yeah, quite like that pick there, Steve. I'm going to keep an eye on him for sure. Let's move on to your final pick for your 10 to watch of 2022, and he's a big one.
ODIN THIAGO HOLM, and unfortunately we're going to have to wait until June to see him back on the field because he's injured. He's got a knee problem, which I think probably late May at the earliest he's back. But when he comes back, watch out, because this guy, back end of last season, really caught the eye, I think, with at least 1 or 2 excellent goals. He's 19, so he's still very, very young, and I'm a little bit concerned about the injury thing. He had problems last year as well. Is that something that's going to plague him? He really needs to shake that off. When he comes back, he needs to make sure he nails it down. But I think he could be one of the best players in the second half of the season in the whole league. Technically very, very good youngster. He's got a lot of class about him, and he may have even the highest ceiling of all the players on this whole list. If he can live up to it, I don't know. But yeah, midfielder who he can score a great long-range goal. Probably to say technically, probably his biggest strength. Mentally as well, he's obviously got brains. We know that. Probably the question mark is physical. Like I said, injuries, fitness, things like that. That's something that he's got to try and solve. But I'm really looking forward to him coming back, hopefully at full fitness, and he can dominate that midfield for Vålerenga.
Yeah, he's a player I really like. I actually went on a podcast a couple of years ago. I think it was about a year ago now, for World Football Index, and they asked me to name one big player that I think will break through, and he's one of them. He's hugely rated, isn't he, Steve? Outside Norway as well as inside. Massively
big reputation. I think it will come no surprise to people that he's on this list. Some might not have included him because they know he's injured to start the season with, but it's pretty obvious he's going to become, well, I say obvious, like things can go wrong for players, like injuries, like I said. But if he just knuckles down and gets a string of games together, he could just be far too good for a lot of teams. Like, you can just tell someone that's too good. And, you know, Aaron Donham left this club last season, and I could see Holm really leaving at the end of this season as well, if things really work out for him. Certainly within a couple of years, I don't expect him to be at Vålerenga if things work out as we think they are going to for him. So, arguably the most exciting player on this list. And yeah, I just hope he heals well and comes back really strong. But 10 players there to watch out for this season for you all. And I hope you enjoyed it, this extra content. Once again, appreciate all those who have subscribed to us on Patreon. Do leave your comments, anything. things like that. Do you agree with some of these picks? What do you think? Let me know, because I'm all ears.
Yeah, and by the way, Odin THIAGO HOLM, the middle name THIAGO is actually named after Thiago Alcantara of Bayern Munich fame, incredible player, the Spaniard midfielder. So yeah, nicknamed after him, plays a bit like him as well. So there's your 10. I'll go through it for you just now. SIMEN NORDLI, ELIAS Christopher Hagen, Mads Christiansen, CARLO HOLSE, David DATRO FOFANA, LEOPOLD WAHLSTEDT, TOBIAS GULLIKSEN, SAKARIAS OPSAHL, HARALD TANGEN, and ODIN THIAGO HOLM. Keep an eye on these 10. We will be keeping our eyes on them. We're going to have a lot of play in focuses this season. We'll be looking at players to keep an eye on. And as the season goes on our Patreon, we will feature other players, maybe players who break through. We'll look at them from a statistical point of view, what you can keep an eye on, how they play on the pitch, thanks to our partnership with Y-Scout. And obviously, it'll be the place to be if you want to know about upcoming players in this region, as it always has been the Nordic Football Podcast. So hope you've enjoyed this bonus episode on Patreon, and keep an eye on these players to watch in the weeks and months to come. Steve, where can you find us if you want to follow us on social media, etc.?
I'm sure most of you do already, but at Nordic Footpod, at Meatman Soccer, at JF Football. And yeah, looking forward to doing some more of these player profiles on the video as well. It's been great to get the video out here. Hope we come across well. The graphics look nice. And yeah, a new era for Nordic Football Podcast, as we, I think we're kind of in the year 2022 now, aren't we, Jonathan? And got to step up to the plate a little bit.
It's a visual age, isn't it? It's a visual age. So we're finally coming out of our shells. Hope you like it. Hope you like the show. You've missed my giant afro, by the way. If this had been last year, you'd have seen a huge afro. But who knows? It's growing back quite slowly. So yeah, really enjoyed this episode. Hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll have also our Spence scans to watch coming. I'm brushing up on them now, and so yeah, plenty of content on the Nordic Football Podcast in 2022. So thank you for being one of our patrons. We really appreciate your support. We're going to endeavour to bring you a lot more juicy content, including players to watch, weekly previews from a betting point of view for 18-year-olds and over, and much more. So thanks very much. That'll be it for this episode, won't it, Steve?
Yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, leave those comments. Any feedback is most appreciated. But until next time, see you around.
Bye, everyone.